Hi guys, today I will be showing you how to treat Varroa mites with thyme oil. So basically it's very simple. We're going to make a solution with a base oil, and then we're going to put 1 drop of thyme oil in there. If you have a hive with 2 supers, you obviously would double everything. So one of the reasons why we chose thyme oil over all other oils, one, it is the more effective oil against Varroa mites compared to other essential oils. According to some online sources, it has a very high success rate at killing Varroa mites, even up to 100%. And 2, it also helps with keeping the beetles away from the hive and other insects. The only thing with thyme oil, you have to be very careful not to overdo it, because if you overdo it, you could kill your bees. But don't worry, we will show you exactly how we do it. So basically what we're gonna do is make the solution, smoke the hive a little bit, get in there and cut out 4 by 4 inch squares. Soak these squares with the solution and put it in the hive on top of the frames, and that's it. But before we do that, I want to tell you a little bit about our short experiment that we're doing. The bees are super agitated today for some reason. And let me tell you a little bit about my dad. He has not used chemicals at all last year and this year to treat Varroa mites. He's been using other methods to do that. We switched out 2 of these hives to a different bottom boards. Basically it's a screen bottom board, and this will help us figure out how much Varroa mites are actually falling, which is pretty cool. So the very first thing that we did with these bottom boards after we installed them is we smoked the hive, the entrance and on top of the hive, and actually fed them with sugar syrup, and I will be feeding them for another 13 days or so. The queen is caged still. So this hive actually was pretty good visually on Varroa mites. After we smoked them, we only had 2 Varroa mites, about 2 or maybe 3 Varroa mites fall down. And then this hive was a little worse visually with Varroa mites. And what happened is after we smoked them, we had about 25 or so Varroa mites fall down on the screen bottom. So basically, even though this hive had a whole lot less bees, way more Varroa mites fell down. This hive had a whole lot more bees, and we had only 2 Varroa mites fall down just from smoking. Then what we did, we basically let it sit for about 15 hours or so to see how much Varroa mites will fall down naturally without doing anything to it. We checked the first 15 hours, and then now this is the second 15 hours about or so. We'll be checking visually how much Varroa mites fell down naturally. This will tell us, can tell us how hygienic they are. So this is the worst hive that we checked. If you have not seen our last couple of videos, we did one video on this bad hive that had much less bees and much more Varroa mites fall down onto the screen board. And now after our first 15 hours, we visually took a note of how many Varroa mites were in this hive, and so this is the next 15 hours. We're about to visually take a look at it and see how much Varroa mites fall down naturally without doing anything to them. So I don't know if you can see anything, but this is an up-close view of the Varroa mites. I'm about to take a visual count. It's not going to be super exact, but hopefully close enough. This is from the worst hive. We have not done any methoods throughout the year with this hive. We just let it be the way it is. And let me count. This hive had about 65 or so Varroa mites. This is after not doing anything to them. This is how they naturally fall from being naturally hygienic. After visually checking this bad hive, I counted about 65, and I'm sure this is not exact, and it looks like they're getting robbed because they are a weaker family, or they're trying to. Some other hive is trying to rob it. Whew. Yes, I did get stung in the back by that crazy getting robbed hive. And then this hive was the better hive, the stronger hive. We only found about under 10 Varroa mites in this hive after about 15 hours. The first 15 hours that we checked, it was a very similar count to the second 15 hours that we checked. Now we'll be checking and counting the Varroa mites to see how much of them will fall after treating them with thyme oil and coconut oil. The reason why my dad thinks this hive is much lower on Varroa mites is because during the year this hive was queenless twice for about a month, and this dramatically helped reduce the Varroa mites because most of the Varroa mites is in the brood. So my dad purposely uses that in other hives by temporarily putting a queen in a cage so that there is no brood coming out. A lot of people think that you may be losing bees doing this, but you actually may be saving them from Varroa mites. And the interesting thing about that is when you cage the queen at the right time, especially in springtime during a heavy nectar flow, the bees will actually save up a lot of honey, and this will benefit the bees. Instead of wasting all that resources on brood and nurturing the brood, the bees will bring a lot of honey and store a lot of honey for you. And then even if you don't want to take the honey from them, they will have more honey possibly throughout the year and going towards the winter. So caging queen a couple times a year may not be a bad idea. As you saw in our last video, that's the only thing we did with this hive. We did not use any chemicals at all. Last year and this year, absolutely no chemicals, and this hive turned out to be or have a very low count of Varroa mites. And we have noticed this with many other hives, and my dad has noticed that with a lot of his hives, and he's been using that method for a while now on most of his hive by purposely caging the queen. And then this hive was the bad hive. This is the hive that we did not use any methods at all. So this is a swarm hive. When we put the swarm in, we did add a couple brood frames to make it stronger from other beehives, but other than that we did not do anything. We did not cage the queen in here, or any other methods that natural methods that my dad uses normally. And the result is they're supposed to have more bees because we did not. You want to lose weight, become a beekeeper. I think another hive is trying to rob this hive, and that's why, even though I'm not super up close, that's why they're a little bit angry. So basically what I was saying is that it's a good idea to do something throughout the year, in spring, summer, and fall for Varroa mites. We'll be posting other strategies that we incorporate. We don't use all the strategies all the time on each hive, but we at least use 1 or 2 or 3, and depends on what the hive needs. We'll be treating them with thyme oil. So thyme oil has to be food grade. You literally can ingest this thyme oil internally. I will post links in the description section for you to check it out exactly where we get this thyme oil. It's super pure. It has been tested. It has no chemicals. This is the thyme oil we're using for the experiment, and we'll be using coconut oil as our base oil. We are specifically using Nutiva for a couple reasons. One, it was not processed with any chemicals at all. And two, it should have more nutrition benefits like MCTs, antibacterial. So coconut oil in general is supposed to help with Varroa mites. So this will be an interesting experiment. We have used essential oils before, but we have never used it with coconut oil. This is our first time. We are hoping to have a really high success rate with this. We're going to be using coconut oil as a base oil. What we're going to do is basically put 4 ounces of coconut oil in this measuring cup and only 1 drop of thyme oil. And this is how cool this is. If this formula works, it literally has 250 drops in here. If this formula works, this is going to be an extremely inexpensive way of treating a Varroa mite, and it's about $40, but it will last you for a few years if you have a few hives. And then coconut oil is very inexpensive too. I will put a link in the description section. This whole combination should be much cheaper than treating your hives with chemicals 3 times a year. Nutiva is the only brand we recommend. We do not recommend any other brands due to we don't believe in chemicals, and that can produce different results. You can either use a paper towel, 4x4 inch, or you can use a cheesecloth. We'll be trying it with cheesecloth. So this is how we're doing it, but I'm sure if you use a regular paper towel, it should work well too, and we'll show you exactly how to do it. So we're just gonna take 4 ounces of Nutiva coconut oil. You could technically use 2 drops if you're brave, but we will start on the low end. This is a very strong stuff. Oh, we got 2 drops in there. So I guess we're going with the stronger solution. And then mix it really, really good. So coconut oil alone, some people just treat Varroa mites with coconut oil alone. So thyme oil should be a bonus in here. And it needs to be Nutiva brand, because a lot of brands may not have the antibacterial properties in it and the MCTs, and maybe processed with chemicals. And I would mix it really, 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 really good. You could still smell it. It's very strong. So you leave the squares inside the hive. You can leave them for 3 weeks up to a month, and treat them that way. So we'll be documenting the progress and seeing if it's doing anything for our hives. This is experimental, especially with the coconut oil. So if you want to try this at home, you definitely could try it for yourself and see if it works for you. I would mix it really, 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 really good. Because there's only 1 or 2 drops of that oil, it needs to be spread evenly very well. Because that solution is because the essential oil is so strong, it needs to be really spread well. This is very important. All right. And then I'm going to be using a cheesecloth, 4 by 4 inches. And I'll leave it pretty thick like that. Take these out and they're going to be completely soaked, and what you want to do is actually make sure they are completely drained all the way. I mean, not drained, but squeeze them really hard so that there's no oil dripping. If there's oil dripping, the bees can die in it. So make sure it's completely all squeezed out. That is extremely important. You cannot have any oil dripping at all on the bees. And I'm going to take these, make sure they're not dripping, and put them on top for the bees to come in contact with. If they come in contact with this oil, this thyme oil, the Varroa mites should drop. You can leave these in for about a month. And then for the screen bottoms, I'll show you what to do with this. I kill all the Varroa mites on here with this oil. It's very important that you have some kind of oil on the screen bottom because Varroa mites like to crawl, and sometimes the bees get underneath the hive on the screen bottom and get on the top of those bees, and those bees can take these Varroa mites back into the hive, or they can crawl up back into the hive. So it's very important that there is some kind of oil. It doesn't have to be this coconut oil, but the Varroa mites hate this coconut oil. Take some of this coconut oil that is left, we'll soak it with a paper towel, and then we'll spread this paper towel across this screen board so that when Varroa mites fall, they will die and get stuck in the oil, and it will be so much easier to clean this board. So I have treated 2 hives with that solution, 2 drops of thyme oil. That was enough to treat this hive. And that hive, this is a bit stronger hive, that's the weaker hive, and I'm really curious to see if there's a difference. So I will be checking again how many Varroa mites dropped in about 15 hours or so to see if there's any major differences. After they were treated with thyme oil and coconut oil, we have found double the Varroa mites fall down. But this test should not be trusted alone. There are more tests that need to be done, like if the hive, the weaker hive especially, survives the winter, and we'll be posting updates on that too. Hopefully, if we're still around next year. We'll be treating all of our hives with thyme oil and coconut oil and going from there. And so far it's very positive results. To really see, there's just one more test that we need to do, is to see if it survives the winter, and we'll be posting updates on this to see if this weak hive survives the winter. It was in a really bad shape with Varroa mites. If it survives the winter, then there's something to it. Thank you for watching, guys. We will see you in our next video.